All right. Good morning, and I believe and I trust everyone is doing good. Welcome you to my live Facebook video broadcast, and today we are going to look at abomination of desolation of Matthew chapter 24 and verse 15 downwards, because it's one thing which I believe that it relates to Second Thessalonians chapter 2 as far as the man of sin, son of prediction is concerned. So I have delved into that. I have delved into Second Thessalonians chapter 2 in trying to identify, who this man of sin is. And I believe that it is the same man of sin which Daniel spoke of and which Jesus Christ reiterated in Matthew chapter 24, verse 15. And a lot of people believe that this is something that is going to come, in yet future to us, and because see, many believe that there's going to be a rebuild of the temple, and I don't know where they got this idea from, because the temple that the Bible said it was going to be rebuilt, or it is not even going to be rebuilt, but it's going to be built, is one which had already come, and that is the messianic temple or the messianic tabernacle, what we call the church or the kingdom of God. That is what I know. The Lord said He was going to, build in Matthew chapter number 16. But I don't know of any rebuild of uh, annihilated, kingdom or temple. But yet people have conceived this idea, and many have been convinced of the rebuilding of a temple. And I don't know, because in any case, in Jeremiah chapter number 3, verse 16 to 17, it is clearly, stated that the kingdom or the temple will never be rebuilt. After it was, destroyed in 70 AD, that temple, which has, various components, but especially two components, one reserved for God alone and one for the Diana services of the high priest. That I am talking about the Jerusalem temple and holy place and most holy place. That is what I know. And that is the one which was destroyed in 70 AD, of which Jeremiah had prophesied that that temple which had been destroyed will never be rebuilt. And in John chapter number 14, Jesus again reiterated what Jeremiah said will come. In John chapter number 4, and the verses 20, at least to 26, you read there and you realize that the temple to be built is one that does not come with observation, and one that is not made with human hands, and one that is eternal, eternal in nature. So if this idea of the rebuild of a temple is promoted, and I don't know where this dispensationalist, the dispensation, excuse me, the dispensationalists, got this idea from of the rebuild of the temple. But that is what many believe, that the third temple, is going to be rebuilt. Unfortunately, the Bible is silent on that. But anyway, let's get back to business. Now, this text talking out. Now, let's read the text first, because this is followed by verse 14, which Jesus said that the gospel, this gospel of the kingdom will be preached in all the world as a witness to all the nations. Then the end will come. So the end is is in focus here. But prior to verse 24, in prior to verse 14, in verse 1 to verse 3, the apostles have questioned Christ, or sorry, perhaps they inquired from him, what will be the sign of his coming and the consummation of this age. So the end here is in association with the consummation of that aeon or that age. Others, that some translations use the word world, but that is not a correct term to have been applied. The word aeon, in the original language, and so that is translated as age. So the consummation of that age, or this age, and this age, that will mean that this age is the age in which the apostles lived, versus the age to come, which we live in now, and that is everlasting age. And so, in association with the time of the end is the abomination of desolation, and that is what we are going to look at. But anyway, verse 14 was accomplished in the first century. Okay, the gospel was preached to the world in the first century, and so that end was the dissolution, permanent dissolution of that old covenant Jewish world, and their loss of inheritance, and their loss of inheritance in Galatians chapter 4 verse 30, and Matthew chapter 21 verse 43. I believe so. That is that, because the gospel was preached to the inhabitable earth, to all the world, and so the end related to the Jewish end in 70 AD. When you read Galatians chapter 1 verse 5 to 6, and Galatians 1 verse 23, and Romans chapter number 1 verse 5, Romans chapter number 1 verse 8, and many other New Testament passages, they indeed confirm that the word or the gospel has been preached to the inhabitable world in the first century, and so that was the end. By the way, when you trick down to verse 15, it says that then, therefore, when you see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet standing in the holy place, whoever reads, let him understand. So this is what we are going to look at. There's what you call abomination of desolation, and uh, as I said, those who believed in the rebuild of the third temple, they have their understanding and identity of what, or the meaning of what this phrase abomination of desolation means. And there are also those who also believe that it is fulfilled, but it is unrelated to something yet future to us. However, they believe that this was Nero, and they believe that this was Titus, and because this is based on the understanding that whilst the Roman army was making onward movement towards Jerusalem at the Euphrates River, they had managed to throw that steel ball against the fortified city. That is the fortified city, that is Jerusalem, and so they had weakened it, and the continual hitting of the wall, they were able to break that city. They were able to break through into the city and to destroy the resistant force, the led by the Zealot movement and Scarai. So that was the Euphrates. That is Revelation 16. So you don't read Euphrates River drying today and try to associate it to associate it to any Bible prophecies, because what John spoke about has long been accomplished or fulfilled in the first century, prior to 70 AD, when uh, the army, Titus and his Roman army, were making onwards movement towards Jerusalem. But in connection, but to that, and so many believe that because Titus, perhaps entered into the most holy place, they believe that the abomination of desolation was actually Titus. Others believe that it was the Caesars, perhaps Domitian or Nero. But the thing is that none of these Caesars ever stepped their foot into Jerusalem temple, especially the most holy place. And so that the abomination of desolation cannot be any of these Caesars. But the normal rendition is that abomination that brings desolation. Okay, that is the correct rendition. Abomination that brings desolation. So it means that it is this abomination that is actually going to, uh, bring about this desolation. So they was going to cause a desolation. They are going to destroy it, what is there. But there's a reason for which this desolation is actually going to take place. It's because of the abominable act that was perpetuated in the holy place, because it says that standing in the holy place. Okay, so uh so that is that. Okay, it is that abomination that is bringing about this desolation. Now remember what Jesus talked about just the previous chapter, in chapter number 23, Matthew chapter number 23, and the verse is 37. Uh, you can read, it is something that pertains to Old Covenant Israel, their activity, and the fact that, their heinous activity against the church in the first century, and how the Lord had wished to protect them, to give them life, to save them from that impending judgment that was going to come upon them. But they were unrepentant, and so they suffered in that pogrom upon them in 78 AD. However, this is what it says in verse 37, Matthew 23, verse 37. It said that, O Jerusalem, the one who kills the prophet and stone those who are sent to her. How often I wanted to gather your children together as a hen gathers a chick under her wings. You were not willing. Okay, so remember the invitation to the wedding when the king sent out a servant to gather those who were under, or those to whom the wedding and the banquet pertains. No, most of them were unwilling to accept the invitation to the wedding, but eventually they have to kill those who were sent to them, and even including the Messiah himself, because they saw that this to him belonged. He is the heir of the kingdom. So they thought that by putting Christ to death, they can forcefully, usurp, the kingdom. But they mistaken, that that scheme, and so eventually, when this was taking place, in the end, the king was infuriated by their reaction, towards those who were sent to them, and so he came and destroyed their city, bent their city down, and that was destruction upon Israel in 70 AD. All right, so it says that, how I have wished to gather your children together as a hen gathers her chicks under her wing, but you were not willing. But this is, of course, also the what we call the regathering of Israel into the kingdom. But verse 38, he said, I say, your house is left to you a desolate. Now, that house there was the Jerusalem temple. That house there that was left to them desolate was the Jerusalem temple. Okay, so uh now why was the house left to them desolate? Okay, it means that it was without any protection. Now, all throughout history, God has protected them, okay, because of his covenant uh, contract with them, or marriage contract with them. Because remember, in Exodus 25, in verse 24, after they had accepted the commandment God gave to Moses, and he confirmed it with blood of animal. He built his presence with them, so that he said that, build a sanctuary for me so that I can dwell with them. Exodus chapter 24, 25 verse 8. Okay, so long as that building, that presence, or that building stand, God's presence was still with them, and he was their husband. And husband, it's your duty to protect your wife. So God was protecting them, but not until they parted way from the faith. Okay, so the Lord wanted to protect them, but they were unwilling. Okay, so he says that, look, your house is left to you desolate. In other words, their temple was left to them, without any protection. And remember, in Isaiah chapter 65, verse 5 and 6, it says that a sound went out from the temple. Now, if you read Josephus, when the army had invaded Jerusalem, a voice went out from Jerusalem temple, indicating that the Lord has withdrew, or the Lord has, drawn his protection from them. So the temple was just there, without any protection, and it was, raised to the ground without even trace. Remember what Daniel said, it says that it's going to be like, like a winnowing something, something like a chaff is going to be blown away by the air, in talking about the destruction of the temple in Daniel chapter 2, verse 44, 45, and also Matthew chapter number 24, verse 1 and verse 1, through to verse 3. Okay, so that is what occurred in that judgment upon Israel in 70 AD, in the overthrow of their temple. All right, so this is what is going to take place. So Daniel says that, therefore, when they see the abomination of desolation, okay, spoken of by Daniel, the prophet, standing in the holy place. So this has to do with Jewish figure, because it says that whoever reads, let him understand. Then let those who are in Judea flee to the mountains. Let him who is on the housetop not go down to take anything out of his house. So this will be the time of the flight. Okay, and so this cannot be Titus. Okay, because Titus is the one who is bringing the desolate. Okay, or who is going to call? Yeah, who is going to bring the desolate? Okay, and so the presence of this abomination of desolation in the temple was a sign to the believers that look, the end is at hand, so let us flee. Okay, let us flee for protection. Okay, but Titus came, he invaded it and he destroyed it. And even in Luke chapter number 23, it said that when you see the armies, encompassed Jerusalem, so it could not have been Titus. Okay, it could not have been Titus, because once they had encompassed Jerusalem, they cannot descend the faithful from the apostate or the reprobate. Okay, so they are just going to kill them all both. However, Apostle says that give us the sign of your coming. Okay, so the one of the signs include the standing in of the holy place of that abomination that caused desolation. So the standing in the holy place or the abomination of desolation was a sign, prior sign to the to the believers that the end is about to come, and so they should flee. You understand? So it was a sign for them to flee. But at the time when they invaded it, they have already surrounded the city, and so they were entrapped, and no one could escape. However, according to the history, all the saints had fled; none of them perished in that judgment upon Israel. Okay, so this man, or this not man, but this abomination or desolation could not have been titles or anything related to the Caesars. You understand? But a Jewish figure, he is probably the candidate. Okay, that was a sign for the Christian to escape, because they had given ample, signs of the end, and by watching for these signs, they were informed, in advance to escape the city, before the encompassment and before the entrapment and before destruction and enslavement, occurred, which Israel suffered at the hand of the Roman army. Of course, that judgment was ordained by Christ himself, because had it not been Christ's hands in that judgment, the zealot movement would have, defeated the Roman army. Anyway, I wouldn't, but you can go to Deuteronomy 32 to read about it, how it says that how can one person chase 1,000? Okay, that is impossible. So Titus was like, well, if they are refuge, or if their protector had not withdrawn protection from them, we could not have defeated them, because there were many, okay, enough to defend the city and also themselves. But because that judgment was ordained by Christ, they trounced, the unbelievers, and so was the case. But one thing we have to take note of it is that he makes reference to, Jesus told us where he's, quoting this text from it. So he said that spoken of by Daniel. So let's go back to the book of Daniel to see where, Daniel has spoken about this abomination of desolation that is going to stand in the most holy place, or the holy place, and that will give a sign to the believers that look, the end is at hand. So when you go to Daniel, I believe Daniel chapter number 9, this is one powerful text that everyone has to, perhaps acquaint yourself with, because as far as eschatology is concerned, it's very, very helpful text, because it is within this text chapter that we have the 70 weeks. So the 70 weeks is there, but you can, but for the sake of where we want to get to, we are just going to start at verse 26, to perhaps 27. All right. So it says that, and after the 62 weeks, now it says that 70 weeks are determined for your city and also for your people. So the destruction of the city in 70 AD consummated Daniel's 70 weeks countdown. Okay, because the determination is upon the city and also upon his people. And so when was the city overthrown? It was, or destroyed. It was in 70 AD. And it was against Daniel's people, not any modern race or people we have today. The Israel we have today, or Jerusalem we have today, they have nothing to do with the Bible. They are the European Israelite. They are white European Israelite. They are called the Zionist Khazarians. They have nothing to do with the Bible. Who told you Jesus Christ was a white young Jewish man? No. So what we have today, they have nothing to do with the Bible, in terms of prophecy or anything of that sort. Anyway, so he says that after the 62 weeks, Messiah shall be cut off, but not for himself. And the people of the prince who is to come shall destroy the city and the sanctuary. So the people of the prince shall come to destroy the city and also the sanctuary. Now I have told you that the Lord has built, has instructed them, he gave Moses how they should go about, building him a dwelling place, among his people. And so it follows that till the last century, because God still needed a place to rest. So the Ark of Covenant was there, the mercy seat was upon it, the cherubim was upon it. In between the cherubim is the mercy seat, okay, where the Lord comes to rest upon when during the Feast of Atonement, when the high priest will make an entry into the most holy place. Okay, so the people of the prince will come and destroy the city and also the sanctuary. So this, who are the people of the prince? That has to do with the Gentile. That has to do with Roman army invading Jerusalem to destroy the city and also the sanctuary. So what Jesus Christ, had spoken of in Matthew 24, that includes the return of the Lord, that includes the destruction of the temple, and so on and so forth, were those things which Daniel had already spoken about it. That is why Jesus said that, spoken of by Daniel the prophet. So let's see. Now I said that, and the sanctuary, the end of it shall be a flood, until the end of war, desolations are determined. Okay, so it's going to be overwhelming flood. People, dead bodies are going to be piled around, and it says that if that war has not been truncated, there wouldn't be anyone living. I believe that is Luke 21, Luke's version of Olivet Discourse. Okay, so the end of it will be a flood, a flood of beings, a flood of blood, and so on and so forth. Okay, and it said that until the end of the war, desolations are hot, determined. When you see abomination of desolation, okay. Now, what does that mean? It means that someone's action is bringing about the desolation. So the people of the prince will come to cause the desolate, or will cause the desolation. But however, it was someone's action that occasioned the desolation. Okay, so that cannot be titles, that cannot be Caesars. Okay, but someone within Jewish society. He's a Jewish figure. Now, then he shall confirm a covenant with many for 1 week, but in the middle of that 1 week shall bring an end to the sacrifices and offering. I believe Daniel chapter 11, also talks about it. Okay, so there are a lot of things that is taking place here. Sacrifices and offering. Now, I believe, because you see, when you have your temple, the sanctuary destroyed, the the priestly work also comes to an end, because where is he going to offer the sacrifices? Because the place of offering has been destroyed. Isaiah said that the altar of incense and everything are going to be destroyed. They are going to be, powdered. Okay, that is speaking about the destruction of Jerusalem and the temple in connection with the blowing of the last trumpet in Isaiah chapter 27, verse 9 to 13. He also used a similar language. So when the altar of incense and everything has been destroyed, it will bring to an end the sacrifices and offering. And on the wing of abominations shall be the one who called the desolate. Okay, so they are acting upon the wing of abomination. So there's the one who is causing this abominable out within that temple of God, and there's the one who is coming to call the desolate, who is going to destroy the city and also destroy the sanctuary. Okay, and so it could not have been titles, neither could it have been the Caesars, but someone in the Jewish society, a Jewish figure who was causing the desolate, because his presence alone in the holy place was indicative of the imminent sign of the return of the Lord, and also that the end was about to fall upon them all the way in the first century. So on the wing of the abomination shall be the one who makes the desolate. Now, until the consummation, so until the consummation of this desolation, which is determined, is poured out on the desolate. Okay, so at least it gives us a time frame within which this was to take place. One, upon the city, when you start at verse 24, upon the city and the people of the prince will come to destroy the city and also the sanctuary. But until that desolation will be determined, okay, until after the war, and there's a confirmation of covenant for weeks, and also the bringing to an end of the sacrifices and offering. I believe that that is when the temple is destroyed, and so on and so forth. Okay, so what we have to understand is that the abomination of desolation, it was a Jewish figure, but where it says that when you see this man standing in the holy place, so that has to do with the Jerusalem temple. That has nothing to do with temple, after 70 AD. Any temple after 70 AD does not qualify, the temple in both Daniel chapter 9 and Matthew chapter number 24. Okay, because it is only the Jerusalem temple that had holy place and most holy place. Now, Paul had also spoken about this in Second Thessalonians chapter 2. I have already spoken at length about it, but I want to just bring it to your mind, the correlation between this abomination of desolation in the holy place and the man of sin in Second Thessalonians chapter number 2. So in Second Thessalonians chapter number 2, I am not just going to go get straight because I have a full video recorded on this, so you can just go to my page and watch them. Now, in the third, okay, let's start at verse 1. It said that now, brethren, concerning the coming of our Lord Jesus Christ and our gathering to him, we ask you not to be soon shaken in mind or troubled, either by the Spirit or by the word or by the letter, as if from us, as though the day of the Lord has come. That is what we call the next king had already come. So there were people in the first century who even believed that the Lord has come in their days. Yet they were going about their normal business. They did not see physical bodies coming from the ground. Neither did they see the earth burning and so on and so forth. The understanding of the return of the nature of the return of the Lord is different from what we believe today. All right, but it says that let no one deceive you by any means, for that day will not come unless the falling away comes first and the man of sin is revealed. So these are the conditions that will occasion the return of the Lord, the falling away, what we call the apostasy, and also the revelation of the Son of Man, man of sin, son of perdition. Okay, now in Jesus' account of abomination of desolation says that when the saint in the first century see this man in the holy place, then the reader ought to understand. So we have just gone to the background of Matthew 24:15, which is Daniel chapter 9, verse 26 to 27. Now, we are trying to correlate what we have read so far with Paul's man of sin and so on and so forth. So this is what is going to take place. As I said, I wouldn't want to go into this much because I have video on. Now let's look at this man of sin. It says that, and the man of sin is revealed, the son of perdition, who opposes and exalts himself above all that is called God, or that is worship, so that he sits. So this is a present active indicative verb tense. This man of sin, son of perdition, was already sitting, so that he sits as God in the temple of God, showing himself that he is God. Now, when you see abomination of desolation standing in the holy place, so that has to do with the Jerusalem temple. Now, this man of sin, who exalts himself. Now, the reason is that he exalts himself as God. Now, the reason why he exalts himself as God is that, according to Exodus 16, whoever make it into the most holy place transform into God. So that will tell you that this man of sin, son of perdition, was also standing there. So that qualifies him as God. Now, that is worship, so that he sits as God in the temple of God, showing himself that is God. Now, the word temple here is that Greek word now, and it is translated as most holy place or holy place, most holy place. So that has to do with the temple. So here we are also talking about the Jerusalem temple, and this man of sin was sitting there. And Paul, when you read it down the text, it's going to tell you that he had already, spoken about this man to the Thessalonians in the first century. So they knew what was happening. But this man of sin, son of perdition, sits in the holy place. Jesus said that when you see uh, abomination or desolation standing there, but Paul said that this man was sitting. And so that should tell you that the man of sin in Second Thessalonians chapter 2 and what they call it, abomination of desolation, the most holy place, is that man is one and the same. And according to history, it was a zealot leader. Now, this is because it is, let me put it this way, it was a zealot leader called Eliza ben Simon, who took over the temple and who desecrated the temple walls and everything, trying to change everything as ordered according to the law, because he has usurped the high priest authority. And so he was the one who was there. Okay. And also, again, as I said, this man has nothing to do with the Caesar, neither can it be a title, because his presence in the temple was a sign of imminent destruction, or the sign of imminent coming of the Lord. But Christ used the Roman army as instrument, as a pawn or instrument of judgment to bring destruction upon Israel in 70 AD. And this is how we have to understand it. My time is up, my time is over. I'll come your way, God willing, tomorrow to continue, or maybe to talk about different things. So until we meet again on YouTube, it is all hope fulfilled. All hope fulfilled. Just go there and watch the videos that we have there. So until we meet again, we say bye.